Perfect timing. I told y'all we'd be good to go here and we'd be able to rock. I know I got a bit of a late start, but we're not going to have a late start here with the scientific method, Cowboys Nation. We're going to bring in Pat and OC Walker of DallasCowboys.com right now and get this thing started. All right, here we go. I'm dropping science. I'm dropping science. What's good brother?
Hey man, it's my wave. You always bring me in on the right wave, man. What's good, my guy?
Man, I'm doing fantastic. Glad to have you on here after some technical difficulties. Now we back into the flow of things, and I'm just ready to talk ball with you, bro.
Oh man, in ball we shall talk. Some very lively things occurred thus far these first 2 days of a 3-day mini camp for the Cowboys. Today, Thursday being the final day. We'll see if they run light. I think they will. Regardless of what did or did not happen with CeeDee Lamb, I just don't expect that they run at the same pace today. Because if you look at last season, Mike McCarthy cut the mini camp short because he wanted to give the guys more time. But we'll see how it goes because giving the guys more time, I think that's the premise for moving mini camp up because normally it's middle of the month. So we'll give that a look later today in a couple hours or so. But for what we've already seen, what I've already witnessed, yeah.
Your tweets was getting me hype the last couple of days, man. A lot of y'all down there actually appreciate y'all covering it the way y'all were covering it. And you mentioned Mike McCarthy giving the guys time and whatnot, and Mike and Dak had a lot to say over the last couple of days, and it felt like every time they talk, Pat, they kind of sprinkle a little bit of what this offense could be. And I'm sitting here trying to pull any little tidbit of information I can get. They even coined the name. What, Texas Coast?
Texas Coast offense. And for those that don't catch the play on words, McCarthy is from the coaching tree that typically dictates West Coast offense.
Mm-hmm.
And Kellen Moore had run a variation of that for the most part in the McCarthy era. But the question was asked to QB1 yesterday, is it going back to a pure West Coast offense where you have a lot of those short bubble screens and things like that, kind of, executing those as quasi run plays, if you will? And Dak Prescott, with a nice little coy smile, he said, "Nah, we call it the Texas Coast in the quarterback's room because it's not an offense that's out there right now." End quote. So that's intriguing in of itself. If the Cowboys are, putting together kind of a Frankenstein, because we know that they're going to keep the Dak language, quote unquote, as McCarthy said.
Yeah.
But they're also bringing in some fresh ideas from Schottenheimer as offensive coordinator. Obviously, though he won't be calling plays, he's still tasked with coordinating the offense alongside Mike McCarthy. Dak's going to have a ton more input, and he's always had input. I would say at least from year 2 onward, he's had more and more input as the years have progressed. But going into this year, it's his offense. McCarthy said that himself. It is Dak's offense.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting where he was like, I want my quarterback to essentially have total control of the offense. So I'm like, so he didn't have total control before, which I get it. Certain players, especially young guys.
No, he did not.
They need to have that type of coaching. But we're talking about year 8 guy. He pretty much seen a ton of things out there. So I actually like to hear that from McCarthy.
Well, it's different in the capacity of because I don't want anyone to take this as saying, or what McCarthy said as implying that Dak Prescott had no control, because when it comes to the Twitter sphere, if you say apple, that means you said oranges suck, and that's not how it works in the real world. So what McCarthy's basically saying is that Dak will have a massive hand in coordinating the offense. So that's going to be the difference, because as far as having a hand in the offense on game days in real time, you've seen him with the checkdowns and things like that. Absolutely, he's had that for years, kind of had that carte blanche for years. But now it's different because when McCarthy came in, keep in mind, Kellen Moore was already here. Yeah. So Kellen Moore outlasted the previous regime, being Jason Garrett. So McCarthy didn't want to take the play calling duties away from him, et cetera, et cetera. So that puts us in a situation where McCarthy kind of played the passenger seat in that capacity. But with Kellen Moore out of the picture, McCarthy's not looking at Dak and saying, hey, you have to defer to Schottenheimer, who just got here. He's looking at Dak and saying, this is year 8. we've been together several years now. I know what you can do on the field physically. I know what you can do cerebrally. So go do it. And he made an interesting statement, McCarthy did, when he said that there might be times in OTAs and minicamp where Dak will come up to him and say, what are you seeing? What do you think we should do with this next play? And McCarthy's like, what do you think we should do with this next play? So that's the difference in 2023.
Yeah, I think it was Christy Scales who I don't want to misrepresent here, but she asked Dak about the offense and the nuances and the tempo, and Dak talked about how they wanted to become more of an aggressor. And for those who may have missed it, let me go ahead and play this audio for you real quick.
I think it's all of it. Obviously, when you can change your pace, you're going to catch them off guard. You want as many at-bats as we like to say, so we're going to try to get as many plays as we can, more plays, more chances for the big plays. And then lastly, we want to be the aggressors. You know what I'm saying? We want to be attacking these guys, and when we're able to switch the tempo, whether it be no huddle, whether it be a series of them, whether it be slow it down, we just want to make sure that we're dictating the pace, we're being the aggressors, and the game is on our terms and not theirs.
Brother, this sounds like a totally different mental approach from years past, honestly, where we heard a lot of take what the defense gives you, and it felt like in certain spots the defense was dictating to the Cowboys offense. So, I think you're hearing it in Dak, you're hearing it in McCarthy, but they want to be the aggressor. Are you seeing – I know it's hard, minicamp, you're not really showing a lot of things, but are you seeing, Dak and McCarthy kind of coming together to put this, different spin on offense from an aggressive standpoint?
Yeah, I am seeing that. And obviously there's not going to be a lot revealed in OTAs or minicamp, particularly during the media availability portion of it, because they just don't want to tip their hands. But they're still in the install phases. So things are still a bit raw in that capacity. But from what I'm seeing, the shots are being taken downfield. Perfect example. Look at the play that happened with Brandon Cooks on yesterday in team drills. Dak Prescott drops back. Brandon Cooks goes on a go route. And just absolutely smokes double coverage. And that included the safety trying to get the angle on him, but the speed was just too much, could not get the angle. Dak Prescott drops in an absolute dot, 60 yards in stride, touchdown. So those are the kind of aggressive plays that the Cowboys are looking to make. So I mentioned this in a mailbag that's coming up. I think it drops today on the.com. Someone asked about McCarthy leaning heavily on the run. I want everyone to understand what that means. McCarthy's saying this offseason that he's willing to sacrifice offensive production for wins. That basically means that he doesn't care about a 40 burger. He cares about the victory. So if that means the Cowboys only average 26, 27 points per game, which is still damn good in the NFL, but they get a +2 in the win column versus you score 40, but your defense is gassed. And they give up a big play that costs you the game. That's where the run game comes in. It's game management more than anything. Look at what happened in Jacksonville. Look at what happened in Green Bay. Yep. McCarthy learned from that. Dak learned from that. They don't want to see that happen again. So you go and you trade for Brandon Cooks. You go and you draft a guy like Deuce Vaughn. You start to see Kevontae Turpin getting targets in both OTAs and minicamp, and I've seen a lot of that as well. And it all lends to the Cowboys wanting to make big plays and stretch the field. You go and draft Luke Schoonmaker to combine him or tandem him with Jake Ferguson, pay him the shot. So yes, this offense, as far as talent goes, it's set up to really be the aggressor. And when you listen to what Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy are saying, neither one of them are implying that they're going to sit back and let the defense dictate to them. They're going to dictate to the defense.
Hear that, man. I love to hear that, man.
I love to say it.
Let me spin the block though, because you mentioned the deep ball to Brandon Cooks and then kind of went on your way. Mm-hmm. Nah, the way y'all put it on Twitter, man, that thing was a beauty, and it was we finally got a chance to see Brandon Cooks speed. And I want to quote you in the article on .com. You said, quote, "The vet took the first step toward reminding everyone he's hiding a jetpack underneath his shoulder pads." It's like that. That's what it's looking like out there with him.
You know what? You've seen a lot of football. I've seen a lot of football. And there's a difference between knowing a guy's fast and seeing it in real time. And Brandon Cooks has not played a regular season snap with the Cowboys. So to this point, all we know of Brandon Cooks is the speed we've seen on TV and on film in his time with his previous teams. Yesterday was the first real look that I got with these two eyes at Brandon Cooks' speed in real time. And let me tell you, that is different. That is just what he did. And I know people are saying, well, who were the defensive backs? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And here's why it doesn't matter. If I said Jalen Tolbert made that play instead of Brandon Cooks, you'd be justified in asking who the defensive backs were because of the season Jalen Tolbert is coming off of, and the competition that he's going against kind of qualifies his progress. You know what Brandon Cooks can do. Six-time 1,000-yard receiver. He's, no pun intended, cooked the best of the best as far as around the league to get where he is. So it doesn't matter who he smoked in practice, because it doesn't matter who would have been there. They would have gotten smoked, and he smoked them. So Brandon Cooks, his speed is better than advertised. When he said at the Home Run Derby, he was asked if he still has sub 4.35 speed, and he said, "Oh, absolutely." We all smiled, and we're like, "Okay, we hear you. We hear you." And then he showed it yesterday, and then afterwards in the locker room, he was asked if he felt like the Cowboys defense now understands just how fast he is, and he smirked and he said, "Well, you don't know until you know, and now they know." So that, in honor of that, I broke out the notorious, because if you don't know, now you know, right?
That's hard. I ain't gonna lie to you. That's hard.
So Brandon Cooks, he is the real deal when it comes to speed, and better than that, I should say better still, is his ability to run routes. I know a lot of people consider him this deep threat, which you should, because he is that. But what he can also do is run routes very effectively, and he's very deceptive off of the release. His releases are very deceptive because since he can run routes so well, and he's so consistent in every one of his releases, and Dak Prescott pointed this out very eloquently yesterday, if you're a defensive back, you really don't know if it's a go route or if it's a slant or if it's a hook or whatever the case may be. Right. And that puts you in a very precarious position because one of those is going to be a go route. So he can, so he can set you up with some of these underneath routes because you're going to back up initially. You're going to give him that space, and he's just going to operate and just dice you up at the second level. And then the moment you cheat forward, it's good night, Lucy. So
I think that's what makes him dangerous. Is we talked about this a few weeks ago. It's not that he's fast, but he knows how to use his speed to his advantage. He's just not. I use this name, and sorry if you're listening, which you probably aren't, but John Ross, he's not John Ross. He's not a guy that just can run 4.2 straight line. He can actually route you up, and he knows how to
play football.
Yes. Asante Samuel Jr., sorry for the State fans. He put him in a blender when he played him, I believe it was last season, and it was because of how he was using his speed against Samuels Jr., and he did it against their linebackers too. And I'm just sitting here, watching that film and then hearing what you're saying about the deep ball yesterday. And I'm just imagining how you talked about how if you don't know, now you know. Well, no team really knows how this offense with Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Tony Pollard and these boys look like with a true speed threat. Not no offense to Bryce Butler, but not a Bryce Butler who will go out there for 2 or 3 snaps and run on the go route, but a true speed threat that can take it from a screen pass, from a slant to a 9 route. It is something the Cowboys haven't had since, dare I say, Terry Glenn. No?
Yeah, that's fair, because some will bring up Tavon Austin, but Austin didn't materialize here in Dallas. And Austin also didn't enter the Cowboys organization with nearly the resume that Brandon Cooks
like
does.
So, guy.
Yeah, there you go. And Brandon Cooks is not going to be a gadget guy. He is, like I said, and like you said, dare we say it, he's the speediest situation we've had here as far as a complimentary receiver since the days of Terry Glenn.
Rest in
peace to the King, Terry Glenn. And that should excite Cowboys fans, because this is not to say that CeeDee Lamb is slow. He's not, right? So we shouldn't have to state it, but okay, stated. It's not to say that Amari Cooper was slow, because he wasn't. Shouldn't have to be stated, but okay, stated. And that's just not Michael Gallup's bag as far as speed is concerned. So that's the obvious. But Brandon Cooks comes in, and he's basically Kevontae Turpin's speed with a much better NFL resume, better at route running, better at
wide receiver.
Better at playbook recognition and absorption and things like that. Because that's one thing Kevontae Turpin is still working to learn, is the playbook. Keep in mind, he was a rookie last year. So when McCarthy said if Turpin wants to be more involved in the offense going forward, and he does, he needs to, hammer down on the playbook. It's not a case. That's not the situation with Brandon Cooks. I see how quickly he's picking up on the playbook. He's making plays in OTAs and minicamp already. I'm ready to get to training camp. These guys get the pads on and see what he can do. And I mean, again, we know what he can do, but basically to see what he can do against Trevon Diggs and Stephon Gilmore and that 3-headed safety monster. But Cooks is going to get his, man. I don't care who's back there. He's going to get his.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be a legit number 2 wide receiver. I don't know when's the last time he had a number one in CD Lamb opposite of him. So he's going to get a ton of looks, and I think he'll take advantage of it.
Oh, yeah.
On the other side of the ball, last week we talked about wide receiver 4, the war for WR4, right? This week I saw you post about LB3, the battle for LB3, and a guy like Jabril Cox got a chance to gain some momentum. And we really didn't talk about Jabril last week, but I wanted to bring him up because he made a couple plays this week in minicamp. But how's he looking going into year 2 after that ACL? Because that LB3 battle is legitimate and important, honestly.
Yeah, and I know everybody's going to say, well, not everyone's doing well in practice and OTAs and minicamp this season, and I agree. And there are guys who are not, but we're talking about the guys who are. But to my point, and this is where I respectfully disagree with Mike McCarthy, I don't see, and again, I don't see every single thing because media availability is only, well, this time is full of minicamp, but thus from what I'm seeing, I don't see yet the progression of Kelvin Joseph. So I know what McCarthy said yesterday, quote unquote, best stretch of his career with the Cowboys thus far. I don't see it yet, and I'm waiting to see that. But I say that to say, when I say a guy is progressing well, he's progressing well. Jabril Cox on Tuesday, he had 2 PBUs in a row, 2-minute drill within 10 yards of the end zone. And the second one would have been the game saver. And that's why he was swarmed by his teammates immediately after. And it was Cooper Rush throwing the ball for those that say, it was Cooper Rush throwing the ball. But here's why it doesn't matter, because the quality of the throw was pinpoint. Both of those throws by Cooper Rush were exactly where they needed to be. But the best pass cannot beat the best defense. So Jabril Cox was exactly where he needed to be. He read, he reacted, and he got to the spot. Those 3 things coming from a player like Jabril Cox, who is now a good bit removed from his torn ACL, you knew he had the IQ to recognize the play. So we saw him recognize the play on both of those PBUs. And then he reacted. So now you're looking at his knee. Can he plant and explode? He did. How strong is the explosion to the point where can he get to the spot and beat the ball to the spot, beat the receiver to the spot where the ball is going? And he did. All 3 of those things I saw. He checked all 3 boxes, 2 consecutive plays in a row, 2 critical plays to close out the Cowboys practice on Tuesday, and then had another strong practice on Wednesday. So as far as the linebacker 3 conversation, I'm still waiting to see DeMarvion Overshown get his legs, and that makes sense. He's a rookie.
Right.
He hasn't had training camp, so we're not saying Overshown is a bust. We're not saying that. That's you get real football talk here, not clickbait stuff, whatever.
No.
Overshown, I would watch him closer in training camp. But as it stands, Jabril Cox has the lead for LB3 behind Damone Clark and Leighton Van Der Esch, and that's based upon what I'm seeing in OTAs and especially this week in minicamp. And speaking of the linebackers, I spotted LVE.
I saw that. I saw you.
Eyebrow went up like the Rock in 07. So I happened to look over because at one point they split the drills, obviously, first team, second team, etc. So I'm looking over at the second team, and then I happened to glance over at the first team, and lo and behold, I see number 55 rushing off of the edge. So I was like, okay, maybe this is just a blitz play and it's a jailbreak. No, because they ran it back and he went down to the edge again. So not to say LVE is an edge rusher. Nope, not saying that. What I'm saying is Dan Quinn is using what we like to call as experiment season to really have some fun with his guys. LVE is taking a few snaps off of the edge as an edge rusher. That could be interesting. Maybe you see that package unveiled in the regular season. Maybe you don't. He wants it in his bag. That's why he's trying to install it right now to see if it sticks. And then you saw dropping down to the defensive line. A lot of people want to know how Mazi Smith is doing. Looks great. Here's another interesting tidbit. The inference is that Mazi Smith will come in and rotate with Jonathan Hankins, and Hankins has been getting the majority of the reps with the ones, rightfully so, in minicamp. But yesterday there were several packages where Mazi and Jonathan Hankins were lined up side by side, shoulder to shoulder. Hankins as the nose tackle and Mazi as the 3 tech. And that goes to what the Cowboys were saying still about them seeing some pass rush ability, a lot of pass rush ability out of Mazi that wasn't tapped into with Michigan. So things are getting real spicy on that Dan Quinn side of the ball. I tell you what.
You read my mind, bro, because My favorite thing to come out of this entire week was the return of Jonathan Hankins. And to see what if they would line him up with Mozzie Smith. And then we see the pictures and we hear and we get your tweet and your reports that, hey, Mozzie Smith is in that first unit with Jonathan Hankins from time to time. And I personally think those two boys can be the modern day. You remember Pat Williams and Kevin Williams, the Williams bros?
Yeah.
From Minnesota.
Oh,
you know, look, I know it was a different time, you know, where you're not asking these guys to be pass rush guys, but Kevin Williams gave you some of that pass rush. I think Mozzie can do that, while Jonathan Hankins can give you that Pat Williams, the run guy. So, you know, seeing those two guys together was exciting. But you got a chance to get an exclusive with Jonathan Hankins, and you dropped kind of a nugget on that exclusive. Can you go into a little detail? I don't want you to spoil your entire article here, but can you go into a little detail on what Hankins was talking about in regards to Mozzie Smith and himself playing together?
Well, first of all, Hankins, his smile just ear to ear the entire time. And a lot of these interviews, when you're talking to these players, you know, they'll use the word excited. You know, I'm excited for this and I'm thrilled for this. And but when I say it was just emanating, it was just pouring out of Hankins the whole time I was speaking to him, to the point where a couple of times he just stopped and kind of laughed at himself because he couldn't stop smiling. And you know, I asked him about how it feels to have a full offseason with Dan Quinn. Remember, he came in just ahead of the trade deadline. So this is his first full offseason. And he was basically saying that, you know, Dan Quinn is as advertised and he loves playing for Dan Quinn. And then he kind of started talking about the defensive lineman and just how close-knit that room is. And then, of course, I asked him about his early impressions on Mozzie Smith. And he said that he's very, very, very excited to play alongside Mozzie. And he paused and laughed even harder. He said, I know this is coming from a Buckeye. He said, but he was he basically clapped when he saw Mozzie Smith taken with the first round pick. And because he said that he sees greatness in Mozzie Smith. He said Mozzie Smith is he enters the room as one of the strongest players on the entire Cowboys roster. This is Jonathan Hankins.
Yeah, who's one
saying
of the strongest.
This. Yeah, this is Jonathan Hankins saying this. And he said it with a look on his face like, I don't think you understand. And I'm like, maybe I don't, but we're about to find out. But he's elated to play with Mozzie Smith and to play alongside Mozzie Smith in those packages like I'm talking about, like I spoke about a few minutes ago. And then Hankins just went on to just rave about how not only close-knit the defensive line room is and the defense as a whole is, but he said that defensive line room is, quote unquote, we're some bad MFers, end quote. And I asked him straight up, I said, well, this defense and this pass rush was one of the best in the league last year. I mean, it was top 2, and at times it wasn't number 2.
Right.
So I said, you know, where does this go from here, knowing that, you know, you're healthy and you're in the building for the entire year. Mozzie Smith is in the building. Also, Diggy Zua coming off a breakout year. You can go down the list on and on and on. And basically, he said, we're going to pick up right where we left off. Only this time it's going to be scarier for offenses. So scarier is nice. I like scary hours for opposing offenses. Yeah, this Cowboys defense is and if you look at it, there's no reason there should be a follow. They were able to retain LVE, able to retain Dono. You bring in some new pieces like Mozzie Smith, DeMarvion Overshawn. Jabril Cox is trending in the right direction right now. Damone Clark did not have a full offseason of preparation last year as a rookie because he was recovering from that spinal fusion surgery. Now he has a full offseason to participate and acclimate and level up in year 2. So Hankins he's on to something.
Yeah.
DeMarcus Lawrence, another stellar year. Micah Parsons saying, you know what, I'm going to get my sacks, but I want to be an Aaron Donald. I want to be an impact guy. Trevon Diggs, Stephon Gilmore.
I mean, look, we came out of camp, bro, and it was, you know, Watkins and Bohanna were kind of, you know, Watkins, Bohanna, Neville got those were your guys. Tristan Hill in the interior. Anthony Brown and was out on the outside. It wasn't the same. Now you're coming into camp with Mozzie and Hankins to start. Gilmore on the outside. Damone Clark in year 2. So there's more athleticism. Salute to Anthony Barr giving all he can give, but there's more athleticism now behind those guys. And when you bring up a Jabril Cox, I do think that this linebacker unit is in. I think they're on pace to have one of the best years that we've seen in a while because of what's in front of them. And then also, what's behind them? Let's just be real too. Like that unit is so complimentary.
A little bit. It's a little bit going on.
Just a little something.
A little bit.
It's so complimentary that I think one of these units are going to benefit from it, and I think it's going to be the linebacker group, bro.
I think, I mean, when it comes to the defense, one hand washes the other, You got three levels: defensive line, second level linebackers, and linebackers slash your boundary corners, and then you got your safety unit behind you. The only question going into this year for Dan Quinn's offseason, Dan Quinn's 2023 season, was depth at linebacker, and can you figure out another boundary guy? Well, you figured it out boundary wise. You went and got Stephon Gilmore. So then it's like, okay, Jordan Lewis is coming back. You got DeRon Bland. So depth isn't technically an issue at cornerback, but you want to get some anyway, which is why you trade up for Eric Scott, who, by the way, is off to a strong start in camp. So much so that he's taking early reps from Kelvin Joseph, which goes back to what I was saying. He's taking a lot of reps from Kelvin Joseph. So the bigger question was linebacker depth, LB3 and LB4. Where are you at with that? You know what you got in LVE. You've seen where you're going with Damone Clark, but huge question marks behind them. If Jabril Cox can continue on his current trajectory, the LB3 question is answered. And then that frees up a guy like DeMarvion Overshown to truly be used however Dan Quinn wants to utilize him. So the linebacker question might be getting answered right in front of our very faces. And again, we'll see what happens when training camp comes and they start going full speed. But as it stands, Jabril Cox looks outside of pads, which is all we can go on right now. He looks real LSU-ish, and I hope he can transfer that over to Oxnard.
I love to hear it, man. And we're not going to see too many battles of the defensive line and Hankins and Mozzie against the offensive line until we get to camp. Pads, I think he mentioned like the 31st. He said May 31st, Coach McCarthy, but I think he meant July 31st, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Okay. So July 31st, we'll see the pads. But the offensive line, it seemed like things are back to normal. I don't know if they went back into the flashpoint to reset things, and they got tied. They got the Smith Bros on the left side now. But you prefaced it a couple weeks ago. You said, guys, it's going to be experimentations going on. And I admitted this the other day when I heard I saw the Gelkin tweet, and he said something along the lines of, "Hey, I'd be surprised if Tyron is not starting at right tackle." I got a little nervous. But then we hear Coach come out before the first practice and say, "Hey, this week we're working Tyron at left and Tyler at left guard." And I said, okay, maybe this is just them covering all bases because they didn't do this last summer, Pat, and they got bit a little bit. So maybe this year they're saying, all right, we're still out. Let's cover all our bases in case any of these things happen and get all these guys some work. So now I'm kind of more RELAX, relaxed, right? So was things back to normal there? How did some of the guys, the Let's Go's look on the right side, the Doges and whatnot when they did these shifting around? But did you feel like things were back to normal?
Well, you have to define normal in early June. And if you're asking, and without Terrence Steele on top of it being early June, again, it's experiment season. So on Tuesday, it was very pleasant to see Tyron Smith back at left tackle, Tyler Smith moving to left guard, Tyler Biadasz at center. But then when you look at the right side, Zach Martin's going to be Zach Martin, but I know people saw Josh Ball getting some reps there at right guard. Doesn't mean anything is wrong with Zach Martin. It's Zach Martin. Does he need to be out there in early June? No, he doesn't. So Cowboys are getting some guys some work at right guard to see what they have there. Right tackle is where it kind of gets interesting because Willetsko was getting some reps at right guard as well, but he was getting the majority of his reps at right tackle. And I think going into this season, now that he's healthy, former 5th round pick, Cowboy, he has a high ceiling. Go back and look at his film from college. Suffered a shoulder subluxation, but he's healthy now. I think he has the lead horse. He's on the lead horse for swing tackle with the Cowboys. And I like what I'm seeing from him. I was excited going into training camp to get a look at him because of his college tape. And then, of course, before training camp could even really get going, separated the shoulder, and that was pretty much it for his season. And I'm excited again. And hopefully he can remain healthy. And if he does, then that solves the swing tackle equation for the Cowboys. Now, Wednesday, it was kind of back to experimentation because Tyron Smith doesn't practice on Wednesdays. For those that don't know, it's a veteran rest day, especially for him. So he didn't practice. So you saw some guys like Chuma Adoga getting moved around. Tyler Smith was still taking some reps at left guard. You saw him in one of my images line up against Mozzie Smith. Really wish I could have given the video of that. But
Thanos versus Hawk.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. But you saw Chuma getting some reps at left tackle in a couple of those images. So while Chuma does have a lot of ability at left guard, obviously he played there at the NFL level, Cowboys did say they were going to look to flex him, try to get some versatility, and they've already started that with minicamp. So Wednesday was a little bit different because Tyron was on a rest day. Zach is being Zach, right? He's going to be ready. Don't worry about him. But Tuesday is the linchpin in the week for me in this discussion, because it told me that the Cowboys, while they are willing to experiment to see who can play where, at the end of the day, I'm confident that they just know what the right thing is. They know what do the right thing. Spike Lee. It's a Spike Lee joint. Do the right thing.
Come on. Don't play with us when we get down to the camp and we see Terrence Steele at left guard. Don't do that, man. I get trying to figure things out in case something happens, but you also want to get into some type of continuity flow with your actual starters. Because look, I don't think they're going to play in the preseason. Now, this is very early, but I don't think that entire offensive line is going to play in the preseason. So you need to use these practice reps in camp, and I don't know, maybe you can let us know here. Are they going to be doing any scrimmages with different teams this offseason?
As it stands, no. Okay. Could that change? Yes. But as the days roll along and there continues to be no news on that, then the odds continue to be near zero, because teams have to prep for that.
Yeah.
And logistically months ahead of time.
Okay.
So as it stands, there are no scrimmages scheduled. Be interesting to see if that changes during the summer break before training camp fires up. But as we have this conversation, there aren't any scrimmages scheduled for the Cowboys.
I figured they wouldn't go to any of the LA teams because they play them this season.
Right.
But I thought maybe they could sneak Denver in there again. But
no, it worked out for them last year, especially like with the Chargers, for example, Oxnard, LA, preseason against the Chargers. Logistically, it was there. I don't know if they want to circle back and have another dance with the Denver Broncos, considering how things went last time. Things got a little frisky on the field.
True.
So they might want to stay away from Mile High when it comes to scrimmages.
Just real quick, Mike McCarthy mentioned something football nerdish about the zone, the outside zone things changing. And I thought that was interesting. Are they working on their run scheme yet to the public or to the reporter eye, or is this something that we'll have to wait till we get to training camp?
And we're going to have to wait for training camp to really get an eye on that. They're doing so much experimentation, and while they do this second phase of install, first phase being OTAs, is that it's really hard to pin down just how accurate or inaccurate that statement is from Mike McCarthy. And really, as you know, the science is the science, the facts are the facts. And we don't have enough data right now for me to sit here and say yay or nay as far as that comment is concerned from McCarthy. So I see some flashes of it. He doesn't have a reason to lie about that. I'm confident that it's going to happen in training camp, but until I see it, I haven't seen it. And again, that's not to say it's not happening right now, but so much going on with the experimentation, and trying to get Deuce mixed in, trying to get Hunter Lipke mixed in. Rico Dowdle's getting a ton of reps along with Malik Davis as well. They're trying to figure out that running back situation to complement Tony Pollard. So when you're trying to mix in so many guys, there's only so many types of reps each guy can get. Some of these are zone reps, some of these are not. Right. Some of these are screens, some of these are handoffs. So second phase of the install with experimentation, it's too fluid right now. Let's get to training camp and we'll see what it really looks like.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. A lot of this is hard to really tell until we get down there. The pads start coming on, and you get the popping or the thudding, and then really you get a chance to see some of these guys shine in preseason. Any other little things that we might have missed that you want to cover from training camp that might have been important?
I mean, we've touched on a lot of it, and I'll close out on this note.
Camp, I know. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm ready for training camp too. I'll close out on this note. I know a lot of people are wondering how the kicking situation is going. I am on record as saying the Cowboys need to bring in another kicker. That does not mean Tristan Vizcaino is stinking up the joint. He's actually not at all. He was 9 for 9, with his longest being 55 yards on yesterday. He was 7 for 9. He had a miss from 42, a miss from 52, but he again made a 55-yarder. So do the math there. His numbers look really good. But when it comes to a kicker competition, I want all of it. I want all of it. So I like the fact that Jerry Jones said that it's quote unquote likely the Cowboys will add a kicker before they touch down in Oxnard in late July. And we'll see if they hold to that. But I do feel as 100% as I can that even if it doesn't happen before training camp, it won't be long after the start that you will see another kicker come in. And again, Tristan is doing well right now. But it doesn't mean that you want to go ahead and push all your chips in the middle of the table for him. They got to make sure they get things right with this kicker situation.
Yeah, I fully expect them to bring in another kicker. They've been doing it the last couple of seasons. But before you go, I should have started off with this, but your update on CeeDee Lamb, because I know a lot of people kind of.
Yeah. Well, the fact that we didn't start off with it should tell people that I'm not concerned.
Yeah.
He made a play, caught a pass, went down a little bit awkwardly, but he didn't run off the field. He wasn't pulled off of the field. He stayed on for a couple more plays, which is a good sign that it's nothing major. When it was his time to come off of the field, he did, and he didn't go back in, which makes sense. And that's why I tweeted yesterday, even if they run a full practice today, I wouldn't expect that you'd see CeeDee Lamb out there because it's time to bubble wrap him until training camp. So asked around inside the building, I get the sense there is no concern whatsoever as far as CeeDee Lamb's health is concerned. And so that's great news.
Perfect, man. And like you said, the fact that we didn't start off with it, everybody should be feeling fine.
There you go.
Luke Schoolmaker out the boot, but he should be ready for training camp.
Yep, that's the expectation. He was doing some catching drills with tight ends coach Lunda Wells on yesterday, out of the boot, walking in normal shoes, normal socks, barring any kind of setback between now and training camp, which it shouldn't be because he's just dealing with the inflammation, i.e. plantar fasciitis. He'll be on the field in Oxnard when things get started.
So I think already, from last year to this year, the Cowboys are heading into Oxnard on a better health tip than they were last season. If you remember, you had issues.
Knock on wood.
Yeah,
knock on wood.
Yeah. So I think good start. But we know things pop up. We just hope everybody comes out clean once we get down there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Hey man, look, appreciate you coming on every week, brother. And giving us the,
science.
Come on, man.
Oh, and real quick, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't checked it out, make sure you go to patreon.com or download the Patreon app. Check out The Conversation spelled with a K, my new mental health podcast that focuses on topics that transcend gender and race, but also specifically those stigmas that work against men and men of color. So tap in and let's heal and let's start thriving.
My guy, appreciate you, Pat, and we'll get with you next week, brother.
All right, talk to you soon, man. See you later.
Peace. Pat Walker, ladies and gentlemen, DallasCowboys.com, always bringing the goodness to A to Z Sports Live. Thanks for watching, and make sure to follow and subscribe to A to Z Dallas so you don't miss an episode of The Scientific Method. Every Thursday morning, 9 a.m. Central on Facebook and YouTube, with every episode available on A to Z Sports.com.